There are moments in life that split everything into before and after. Not the big, loud, obvious moments. Not the car crashes or the diagnoses or the things people warn you about. The quiet ones. The ones where someone you love closes a door in your face, and you hear the lock click, and you realize that the cold you feel isn't just coming from the snow at your feet. This is one of those moments. And before this story begins, I want you to take 1 second to subscribe to this channel, because what you are about to hear is the kind of story that makes you call the person who always believed in you and thank them before it's too late. Now, let's go back. Her name is Rachel. Rachel Doyle. 32 years old. An emergency room nurse. Not the kind of woman who falls apart. The kind of woman who holds other people together while they're falling apart. The kind of woman who walks into the worst moments of strangers' lives and stays calm, stays focused, stays present, because that is the job. And it isn't just the job for Rachel. It is who she is. She has always been the one who handles things. Since she was a little girl, in a house where things frequently needed handling. She is the kind of person who figures it out. Who doesn't ask. Who doesn't lean. Who doesn't make it anyone else's problem. And here is the painful irony of being that kind of person. The people around you decide you don't need anything. And some of them decide that out loud. And a few of them decide it while quietly helping themselves to what's yours. Rachel didn't know about that last part yet. Not on that Christmas night. Not while she was standing on the porch. Let me tell you how she got there. 3 months before that Christmas, Rachel had taken a position as an ER nurse at the hospital in her hometown. She'd spent years working in the city, building her career, building her savings, building a life. And then this opportunity came. A good position. A hospital she respected. A place she knew. The only thing that wasn't ready was the apartment she wanted. The one that wouldn't open up until February. And her first few hospital paychecks were still clearing through the system. So Rachel did what a sensible, responsible adult does. She asked her parents if she could stay in her old bedroom for 8 weeks. Just 2 months. Just until February. She would be out the day the apartment was ready. She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't asking to be taken care of. She was asking for a temporary roof, for 60 days, while she got on her feet in a new city. That's the whole story of her terrible dependence. That's the shameful burden she placed on her family. A working nurse. Sleeping in her childhood bedroom. For 8 weeks. To be smart with money. She moved in. And almost immediately, she noticed the temperature. Not the temperature of the house, though that had its own cold pockets. The temperature of the family itself. The way it arranged and rearranged itself. The way it tilted. Always tilted. Toward Cody. Cody is Rachel's brother. 4 years younger. And from the time he arrived in the world ahead of schedule, fragile and needing every machine the hospital had, he had been the sun around which the family orbited. There had always been a reason for it. He'd been a premature baby. He'd struggled in school. He'd lost jobs. 3 of them. 4. The reasons kept coming, and each one became more evidence that Cody needed protecting, needed shielding, needed the world softened before it touched him. And Rachel, who handled her own setbacks quietly, without an audience, without requiring anyone to adjust anything on her behalf. Rachel became evidence of something else entirely. She became proof that some children simply don't need their parents. Her mother said it like a compliment. "Oh, Rachel's fine," she'd say, waving a hand. "Rachel can take care of herself." And she'd turn back to Cody. And Rachel would watch. Now, back home as an adult, Rachel watched up close in a way she never had before. Cody, 28 years old and between jobs again, was having his car payment handled. Checks were pressed into his hand at the dinner table. There was talk of a deposit for an apartment for Cody and his fiancée. A newer truck appeared in the driveway one morning. And Rachel, the working nurse, the one with the steady income and the pension forming, was being reminded that she was lucky they were letting her stay. One evening, she offered to contribute money for groceries. She was eating their food, after all. It seemed right. Fair. Simple. Her mother patted her hand and said something that should have stung, but landed instead like something Rachel already knew how to absorb. "Don't worry about it, sweetheart," her mother said. "You can barely take care of yourself. You can't do anything on your own anyway." Rachel let it go. She always let it go. And here is what she didn't understand yet. Sitting at that table, swallowing the thing she should have said. She didn't understand that the quality that made her easy to dismiss was the exact quality that made her easy to steal from. If you never check the account, nobody has to cover their tracks very carefully. Let me tell you about the card. The card in the bottom of Rachel's wallet. Soft-edged. Numbers half worn off. Old enough that she barely remembered it was there. It came from her grandfather, Pup Leo. Leonard Marsh. Her mother's father. The one person in Rachel's life who saw her clearly and completely, without agenda, without the need to make her smaller so someone else could seem larger. Pup Leo died 6 years before that Christmas. But before he died, before his health began failing, he did something for Rachel that she wouldn't fully understand for many years. He took her out for pie. Just the two of them. The summer after her high school graduation. A diner booth, a slice of apple pie, the afternoon light coming through the windows. He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a debit card with Rachel's name on it, attached to an account he had opened and funded in her name alone. A real amount. Enough to mean something to an 18-year-old who was about to walk into the world. "This is for your future," he told her. "For school. For emergencies. For the day you need to stand on your own 2 feet. And then he did something unusual. He took a paper napkin. He wrote something on it. He folded it into a small square and slid it behind the card in her wallet. "Keep this with the card," he said. "Don't read it now. Read it the day you need it." He looked her in the eye. And then, quietly and seriously, he said one more thing. "Rachel, don't tell your mother about this account." He paused. "She'll spend it." Rachel laughed. She was 18. She thought he was being a grumpy old man about his own daughter. She tucked the napkin away, forgot to wonder about it, and moved forward into the life she was building. She used the account a little in college. Then less. Then not at all once she had a salary. Years passed. The card went soft in the bottom of her wallet. And the napkin sat folded behind it, unread, patient, waiting for a day Rachel didn't know was coming. 6 years before that Christmas, Pup Leo died. Rachel's mother handled everything. The power of attorney. The estate. The accounts. The paperwork. All of it. Rachel was 26, living in the city, grieving, and grateful that someone was managing the practical pieces so she didn't have to. At the funeral, she approached her mother quietly and asked whether Pop had left anything. Any keepsake. Any note. Just something small. Because he had been the one person who truly saw her, and she wanted to hold something of his. Her mother looked her in the eye, at her own father's funeral, and said, "Oh, honey, your grandfather didn't have much at the end. There wasn't really anything to leave. Don't go getting your hopes up about an inheritance." Rachel believed her. Of course she did. She was her mother, standing at her father's grave. The idea that a lie could live in that moment, in that setting, in that sentence, it never entered Rachel's mind. She let go of the thought of any gift from Pop Leo. She had her memories. She had a scratched, almost forgotten debit card she assumed had been closed or emptied years ago. And she had no idea at all, that she was carrying something extraordinary. She had no idea what was sitting on a screen at a bank, waiting. The first week of December, Rachel came home from a long shift to find her mother sitting at the kitchen table with the particular expression she wore when she had already decided something and was about to present it as a conversation. Cody and his fiancée Belle were moving in. They needed a place. They needed stability. They needed the room. Rachel's room. Her mother delivered it like good news, with the warmth of someone doing everyone a favor, including Rachel. "It just makes more sense," she said. "You're so independent. You'll land on your feet anywhere. Cody and Belle really need the stability right now." And there it was again. That sentence. That word. Independent. Her competence had become the justification for her displacement. Cody's helplessness had earned him a home. Rachel's capability had earned her an eviction. She tried to be reasonable. She explained the situation, calmly, factually. The apartment wasn't ready until February. She needed the 8 weeks. She would be out the exact day she said she would. She wasn't asking for anything extra. Her mother's face shifted. A hardness Rachel had seen before but never quite acknowledged. "Don't be dramatic," she said. "You'll figure it out. You always do." Rachel didn't understand yet why her mother was so eager to get her out of that house. It wasn't really about Cody needing a room. It was about Rachel getting too close. She was in the house. She was observing. She was noticing the truck and the watch and the money that didn't add up to the story she'd been told about careful retirees on a fixed income. She was asking light questions that were getting a little less light each time. A daughter who lives in another city can't see anything. A daughter sleeping down the hall might start seeing everything. Her mother needed her gone before she started looking. Christmas gave her the excuse. The Christmas dinner table was full. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The whole warm, lit, loud performance of family. And Rachel's mother spent the meal narrating Cody's bright future. The engagement. The apartment they were planning. The fresh start. When the conversation drifted to Rachel, it drifted downward, the way it always did in this house. "Rachel's still finding herself," her mother announced to the table, with a sympathetic tilt of her head. This while Rachel held a steady job in the most demanding department in the building and had a pension forming and an apartment lined up. "We're letting her stay with us while she sorts things out." Letting her stay. Sorts things out. Rachel ate her dinner in her sweater that wasn't a scrubs top and said nothing, because making a scene at Christmas would only prove her mother's point, and Rachel had been not proving that point her entire life. After the dishes were cleared, after the dessert plates were stacked, her father slipped into the den. He always did that. When something hard was about to happen, her father disappeared. Her mother followed Rachel into the kitchen. "We think it's best if you go tonight." Just like that. Tonight. Christmas night. Rachel asked if she was serious. Asked if she could stay until morning, at least. Pack her things properly. Have a cup of coffee and drive in daylight. "Cody and Belle are coming in the morning," her mother said. "And honestly, Rachel, the longer you drag this out, the harder you make it for everyone. You can't keep leaning on us. You need to learn to do things on your own." Rachel went to gather her bags. Her mother stopped her. Said they'd send her things along later. That she should just go. That she was making it into a production when it didn't need to be one. So Rachel left. With her purse over her shoulder and her coat still in her hands. No bags. No belongings. Nothing but what had been on her body when she walked into the kitchen. Her mother stood in the open doorway behind her, warm yellow light framing her like something out of a painting, and said the line that Rachel would carry inside her for the rest of her life. "You can't do anything on your own, Rachel." A breath. "You're desperate." And the door closed. And the lock turned. And Rachel stood on the porch she'd grown up walking in and out of, in the snow, with the sound of that lock still in her ears. She sat in her car for a long time. Engine running for the heat. Snow filling in the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. Her hands were shaking and it was not from the cold. She is not going to pretend she was calm in those minutes. She is not going to perform the strength she didn't feel. But here is what the emergency room teaches you. Here is what years of standing in the worst moments teaches you. When everything goes wrong at once, you don't get to fall apart. You triage. So she triaged. She had $60 in cash. A quarter tank of gas. A credit card close to its limit from moving expenses. She needed somewhere to sleep that wasn't a parking lot. She went through her wallet under the dome light, looking for anything, any forgotten resource, any small mercy. And her fingers found the old card. Pop Leo's card. Soft at the edges. Numbers worn to ghosts. And tucked behind it, a small square of folded paper she hadn't touched in 14 years. She didn't open the napkin that night. She was too exhausted. Too close to the edge. Too full of everything that had just happened. But she held that card in her hand and she thought, maybe there's $20 left on it. Maybe enough for one night somewhere warm. Her mother had said there was nothing. She'd believed that for 6 years. So she wasn't hoping for a miracle. She was hoping for bus fare. She found a motel off the highway and paid cash for one night. She lay on the bed in her coat for a while before she could make herself move. And then she made a decision. In the morning, she would take that old card to a bank. And she would see what her grandfather had left her. Even if it was nothing. Even if her mother had been telling the truth. She would look. She walked into the credit union on Main Street when it opened, running on no sleep and a cup of terrible coffee from the motel lobby. Small place. One teller window. A manager's desk in the open. The kind of bank where people know each other's names. Rachel slid the card across the counter with a small, self-deprecating laugh. "This is really old," she said. "It might be closed. I just want to check the balance, if there's anything on it." The teller swiped it. Frowned. Swiped it again. Then said, in a particular kind of voice, a voice Rachel recognized from the hallways of her hospital. "Let me get my manager." The way you say that when you don't want to say the actual thing in front of the patient. Rachel's stomach dropped. The manager came over. A calm, precise woman named Joan. She sat at her desk, pulled up the account on her screen, and read. And scrolled. And read more. And the color drained out of her face. She looked at Rachel. Then back at the screen. Then she lowered her voice to the register of someone carrying news they've had to carry before. She said. "Please sit down. You need to see this." Rachel Saturday. Her heart was doing what it does in a trauma bay. That slow, heavy pounding. The kind that feels too loud for the room you're in. She braced herself. Here it comes, she thought. The account is empty. It's been closed. It's overdrawn somehow. This is the final piece of a very bad week. This is the part where even the last small hope turns out to be nothing. She waited for empty. Joan turned the monitor so Rachel could see the screen. It was not empty. It was full. Full of transactions. Years and years of them. Withdrawals. Transfers. Dozens of entries scrolling back further than Rachel could immediately process. And not one of those transactions had been made by Rachel. Rachel sat very still. Her eyes moved down the list. The transfers had a destination. The bank's records showed it clearly. They went to an account belonging to Sharon Doyle, Rachel's mother. The account that Poplio had opened in Rachel's name alone. The account her mother had sworn at his funeral didn't exist. The account Rachel had assumed for 6 years was empty or closed. Had been used as a personal fund for years. Before Poplio died. And after. 4 years after. Regular amounts. Sometimes large amounts. Dozens and dozens of transfers out. Flowing steadily from an account with Rachel's name on it to an account with her mother's name on it. And here is the thing about Poplio that Rachel hadn't known. He hadn't just put a starting amount in that account 18 years ago and walked away. He had kept adding to it. Over the years. Quietly, steadily, building something for his granddaughter. Building what he hoped would be a foundation under her feet for the day she needed one. And her mother had been quietly bleeding it out the whole time. Rachel asked Joan, in a voice she kept level with everything she had, who had authorized the withdrawals. Joan pulled up more detail. Gave her a careful answer. The access, for years, had been tied to a power of attorney. The authorization her mother had held over Poplio's affairs near the end of his life. But Joan said something else. She said it slowly and with precision. "Miss Doyle, this account is in your name. You are the sole owner." She paused. "And these transactions, particularly the ones after the date your grandfather passed." She stopped. She didn't have to finish. Because Rachel already understood. A power of attorney is a legal instrument that lives and breathes and functions because the person who granted it is alive. The moment Poplio died, that power of attorney died with him. Instantly. Automatically. In every state. No exceptions. No grace period. No technicality that allows it to continue. Every withdrawal her mother had made after the date of his death came from an account she had no legal authority to touch. And it wasn't even his account. It had never been his account. It was Rachel's. Rachel thought about the truck in the driveway. The watch. The debts that had quietly evaporated. The deposit on Cody's apartment. The checks pressed into her brother's hand at the dinner table. Family money, her mother had called it. Money being handled. She thought about every year she had worked and saved and lived within her means and asked for nothing from anyone and been called the strong, independent one. She thought about every dollar she had never asked her parents for because she was fine. She could take care of herself, she didn't need help. She thought about her mother standing at Pop Leo's funeral, looking Rachel in the eye, choosing that moment of all moments to place the lie. There wasn't really anything to leave. Honey, don't go getting your hopes up. The most effective lies are the ones that gently tell you there's nothing worth looking at. So you stop looking. She had stopped looking. Her mother had counted on it for 6 years. Joan asked, gently, if Rachel was all right. Rachel looked up. Print everything, she said. Every page. Everything you have. While the printer ran its long, warm stack of pages, Rachel sat in the chair and let the ER nurse in her take over from the daughter. The daughter wanted to drive to that house and break something. The nurse made a list. Get the statements. Identify the fraud. Find a lawyer. Document everything. Stay calm. Because the calm person in the crisis is the one who controls it. By the time Joan handed her a thick stack of still warm paper, Rachel was no longer a woman who'd been thrown out in the snow. She was a creditor. Building a case. Back in the motel room, statements spread across the bed like evidence on a table, Rachel finally read her grandfather's note. The little square of folded napkin she had carried for 14 years without opening. The paper had gone soft and yellow. The folds nearly worn through. But his handwriting was still there. That careful, slanted print she'd recognized anywhere. She read it once. She sat very still. Then she read it again. And on the third reading, her hands were steady. This is what Pop Leo had written on a paper napkin in a diner booth, the summer Rachel graduated from high school, 14 years before that Christmas night. He had written it for a day he knew was coming, even when Rachel didn't. For when you have to stand on your own. This is yours, Rachel. Nobody else's. Don't tell your mother about it because she'll spend it, and she'll have a good reason every time. Some people love you and steal from you in the same breath. Protect yourself. Love, Grandpa Leo. Rachel sat on the edge of that motel bed. She read it 3 times. And on the third time, something shifted in her chest. Not grief, though grief was there. Not rage, though that was there too. Something older and steadier. Recognition. He had seen it. He had known. He had tried, with the limited tools available to a grandfather in a diner booth, to build a wall around her before the damage could begin. He'd predicted this. He'd named his own daughter as the threat. On a napkin. 14 years ago. The only thing he'd gotten wrong was trusting that Rachel would read it in time. But here was the thing about the note. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was evidence. It proved the account was meant for Rachel alone. It proved her grandfather had explicitly and intentionally excluded her mother. It proved that nothing that had happened to that account was accidental, or ambiguous, or a matter of family interpretation. 6 years dead, Pop Leo had just handed Rachel the cornerstone of her case. She folded the napkin back along its worn creases. She put it somewhere safe. And she sat with the steady beat of her own heart and thought about what came next. She found Tom Avery through a referral. An estate and elder law attorney 2 towns over. She drove to his office carrying the statements and the napkin in a plain envelope and laid everything on his desk and talked while he listened with his pen down. He didn't interrupt. That was the first thing she noticed. He let her go all the way through without stopping her. And when she finished, he picked up his pen and said, "Ms. Doyle, I want to make sure you understand how strong this is. Because people in your position often think they have less than they do." He walked her through it methodically. The account was solely hers. Demonstrably. Her grandfather's power of attorney, whatever it had once permitted, had terminated the instant he died. That's automatic. That's the law. No gray area, no exception, no court in the country that reads it differently. Every transfer her mother had made from that account after his death was unauthorized. Completely. Fully. Legally. This isn't a misunderstanding between family members, Tom said. This is conversion. Possibly criminal. At minimum, you have strong grounds to demand full recovery of those funds. And the credit union's fraud process may reverse a significant portion directly. He picked up the napkin in its plastic sleeve and looked at it for a long moment. And this, he said, is unusually helpful. It establishes your grandfather's intent. It explicitly excludes your mother by name. Juries like intent. Judges like intent. Banks like intent. He set it down. Rachel asked the question she'd needed to ask before any of this moved forward. I don't want to destroy my family if I don't have to, she said. I want my money back. Can we do this in a way that gives them a chance to make it right before it becomes criminal? Tom looked at her for a moment. We can lead with a demand and a recovery plan, he said. Whether it stays civil depends entirely on how they respond. Good, she thought. I'll give them the chance. More of a chance than they gave me on a porch in the snow. But the choice would be theirs. In writing. On the record. The credit union does not sit on a fraud claim. Within days, their fraud department had opened a review. And the moment Rachel's mother received a call from the bank, and not a call from Rachel, the temperature changed. The first text came cold as ice. I don't know what you've started. Stop it immediately. Rachel didn't answer. The second text came a day later with a crack in it. The bank called me. Whatever you think you saw, it is not what it looks like. We need to talk before you do something you'll regret. She still didn't answer. Because she had learned, finally, what she should have learned years earlier. Answering her mother was how her mother got her hooks in. Every conversation was a door she could walk through and rearrange the furniture while Rachel was still trying to get her bearings. The statements couldn't be argued with. Rachel's silence couldn't be twisted. So she let the paper do the talking and kept her own mouth shut. And it drove her mother to a fury she'd never seen before. The texts started coming in clusters, swinging between threats and tears, between anger and wounded dignity, between accusations and pleas. And every single message confirmed what the bank screen had already said. Because here is what an innocent person says when someone starts questioning their finances. Check whatever you want. It's all fine. An innocent person says that. Her mother said stop. Don't. You'll regret this. It's not what it looks like. Those are not the words of someone who's been wronged. Those are the words of someone who's been caught. Rachel screenshot every one and sent them to Tom Avery. Then she went back to work in the ER, where at least the bleeding was honest. Cody found her in the hospital parking lot after a shift. He was a mess. Angry and scared and trying to be intimidating, which had never been his strongest skill, standing there in the cold in the parking lot while Rachel leaned against her car in her scrubs, too tired for performance. What are you doing to Mom? He said. She's freaking out. You're trying to send her to jail over money. Rachel looked at her brother. Not with rage. Not with the contempt that would have been easy. With something quieter. Cody, she said. Do you know where the money for your truck came from? Your apartment deposit? The debts that disappeared. He opened his mouth. Closed it. In that pause, she saw it. He knew, or he had chosen not to know. Which is its own kind of knowing. He had felt the thing that didn't add up and had decided not to pull the thread. Mom said it was family money, he said, weaker now. She said it was an account that was kind of, all of ours. Family money. There was the phrase she'd used to launder it, first in her own mind, then in his. It was an account our grandfather put in my name, Rachel said. Only mine. He left me a note telling me to keep it away from her because she'd spend it. She let that land. And she spent it on you. She watched her brother's face do something she'd never seen it do. The face of a man understanding that the thing he'd been given, the help, the ease, the cleared debts and new truck and fresh starts, had been paid for by someone else's account, by someone who hadn't even known her money was leaving. I didn't know, he said. And she believed him. I didn't ask, she said. And that's the whole problem with being the one they protect. You never have to ask where it comes from. He had no answer for that. He stood in the cold parking lot looking younger than 28. And Rachel felt something she hadn't expected. Not triumph. Pity. He had been bought with her money and he had never even known the price. When threats didn't work and Cody didn't work, her mother reached for the oldest tool in her kit. She called. And Rachel, on Tom's advice, picked up, documented, let it go to memory and said almost nothing. Her mother's voice was soft now, wounded, maternal, the voice that had always been the most dangerous one, because it sounded like love. Rachel, sweetheart, I think this has all gotten so out of hand. Are you really going to send your own mother to prison over money your grandfather basically meant for the whole family? After everything your father and I have done for you? Rachel let the silence stretch. Then she said, evenly, Grandpa didn't mean it for the family, Mom. He put it in my name. And he left me a note about you specifically. A sharp intake of breath. She hadn't known about the note. I don't want you in prison, Rachel went on, and it was true. I want my money back. Every dollar you took after he died. You have a chance to make this right before it goes any further. That's more of a chance than you gave me. Her mother switched, instantly, from tears to ice. The mask dropped clean off. After everything, she said, you're choosing money over your family. And Rachel almost laughed. Because there it was. The most perfect projection she'd ever witnessed. No, Mom, she said quietly. You did that 6 years ago. I'm just the one who finally noticed. And she hung up, gently, while her mother was still talking. And she sat with her own steady heartbeat and realized something. She wasn't afraid of her anymore. You stop being afraid of someone the moment you can see the whole trick. Her father called the night before the family dinner. He is a quiet man, her father. Conflict-shy in the way some people are, so deeply that it functions as its own kind of cruelty, because staying out of it is still a choice. He'd spent the entire crisis exactly where he spends every crisis. In the den. Door closed. But that night, he called. And his voice was rough in a way she hadn't heard before. Rachel, he said. Just her name, first. As if he needed a moment with it. Then it came out in pieces. He'd known. Not everything. Not the full scope. Not the legal dimensions. But he'd known that Sharon was taking from the account. He'd told himself it was borrowing. He'd told himself she'd pay it back. He'd told himself it wasn't his business to police his wife. He'd watched her tell Rachel at the funeral that there was nothing. And he'd said nothing. Because saying something would have meant a fight. And her father would rather lose a daughter than have a fight. I let it happen, he said. I let her put you out in the snow. He was crying now. The awful held-back kind. The kind that sounds like a man who never learned how. I should have told you years ago. I'm so ashamed. Rachel believed him. And it hurt more than her mother's threats. Because his was the cowardice of someone who loved her and still couldn't move. Dad, she said gently. Thank you for telling me. I mean that. Then the hard part. But I'm not stopping. The money's mine and I'm getting it back, and I'm not going to pretend at that dinner tomorrow that this didn't happen. He was quiet for a long moment. I know, he said. I just wanted you to hear once that you were right. You were always the strong one. And we used that against you. A breath. I used it against you. It wasn't enough. But it was true. And it was the first true thing anyone in that house had said to her in years. She held it. The family dinner was set for the first Sunday of the new year. Her mother had stacked the room. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The same audience that had watched Rachel get narrated down at Christmas, now reassembled for what her mother clearly intended to be a verdict. Surround Rachel with relatives. Frame her as the greedy, vengeful daughter dragging a family through the mud. Apply enough collective pressure that she'd back down just to make the discomfort stop. She wanted Rachel outnumbered. She wanted a jury she'd already briefed. The old Rachel would have walked into that room and folded. But Rachel wasn't bringing the old Rachel. She was bringing a folder. Tom had prepared a clean packet. Copies of the key statements. The timeline with dates. The legal summary. And a copy of Pop Leo's note. She put it in a plain white envelope and drove to the house she'd been thrown out of 2 weeks earlier. She parked. She sat for a moment with the envelope on the passenger seat. She touched it lightly, the way you touch something to make sure it's real. Then she walked up the porch steps, past the door that had been locked against her in the snow. And she walked inside. The living room was arranged the way battles are arranged by the person who gets there first. Her mother sat in the center of the couch, positioned like someone holding court. Her father beside her, staring at his hands. Cody and Belle off to one side. A half circle of relatives in the good chairs, cups of coffee in their hands and preloaded opinions in their eyes. Her mother began before Rachel had even sat down. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice carrying the tremble of a woman deeply wronged. "I didn't want to do this so publicly, but I think Rachel needs to hear from her whole family." She turned those wet eyes on Rachel. Rachel has decided, over some misunderstanding about her grandfather's old accounts, to accuse me, her own mother, of stealing. She's gone to lawyers. She's gone to the bank. She's trying to have me charged with the crime. A murmur went around the room. An aunt shook her head in Rachel's direction. "We took her in," her mother continued, gathering momentum. "We let her live here when she had nowhere to go. And this is how she repays us. I've always said it. You all know I have. That girl is desperate. She can't do anything on her own. And now she's inventing a story to take money she didn't earn." There it was. The whole strategy in one breath. The eviction rewritten as charity. The theft rewritten as Rachel's delusion. The word desperate deployed one final time, aimed at the old wound, hoping it still opened. And Rachel felt the pull. The lifelong, bone-deep pull to make the discomfort stop. To shrink. To apologize. To fold herself back into the shape that made everyone else comfortable. She felt it. And then she looked down at the envelope in her hands. And she thought about 14 years of carrying a note she never read. And she was done being the only person at this table who didn't get to finish a sentence. She didn't raise her voice. "Can I show everyone something?" she said. And she opened the envelope. She laid the pages on the coffee table in the center of the room, one at a time, the way you lay out evidence. "This is a bank statement," she said, quiet and steady, "for an account my grandfather opened in my name when I was 18. Only my name." She set down the next page. "These are the withdrawals and transfers out of that account. Dozens of them, over years. Every single one of them goes to an account belonging to my mother. I never authorized one." A few of the aunts leaned forward despite themselves. "My mother told me at my grandfather's funeral that he left nothing. That there was no account. She said that so I'd never look." She set down the third page. The timeline. Her finger found a date on the page. "This is the day my grandfather died. A power of attorney ends the moment a person dies. That is the law in every state, with no exceptions. Every transfer after this date came from my account with no legal authority at all. My lawyer calls it conversion. The bank calls it fraud. And they've already begun reversing it." The room had gone very quiet. Her mother's face was doing something Rachel had never seen it do. Cracking. And then Rachel laid down the last page. A copy of a soft yellow napkin, worn at the folds, handwriting still clear. "And this," she said, "is a note my grandfather folded into my wallet when I was 18. I only read it 2 weeks ago." She read it aloud. Into the silence of that room. Every word of it. Her grandfather's voice, 6 years dead, reaching across everything. "For when you have to stand on your own. This is yours, Rachel. Nobody else's. Don't tell your mother because she'll spend it. Some people love you and steal from you in the same breath. Protect yourself. Love, Grandpa Leo." Rachel looked up. "He knew," she said. 6 years before any of this happened, my own grandfather knew exactly what she would do. That was when her mother came up off the couch, screaming. "That money was for this family. After everything I did for you, you ungrateful, scheming. You would humiliate me in my own home over money your grandfather would have wanted us to have." She was shaking, pointing, her composure gone as completely as if it had never existed. And the entire room turned to look at her. Not at Rachel. At her. Because a woman who has been wronged does not scream like that. A woman who has been caught does. Rachel stayed in her chair. She kept her voice low. "Grandpa knew you'd say that, Mom," she said. "He wrote it on a napkin when I was 18. and the room was finally, fully, completely silent. Her Uncle Ray, her mother's own brother, reached down and picked up the timeline. Read it slowly. Found the date of Pop Leo's death. Traced the transfers that came after it. Set the pages back down. And said, quietly, into the silence, "She's not the one who couldn't take care of herself." It landed in the room like a stone in still water, rippling outward. The word her mother had hung on Rachel her entire life, drifting across the room and settling, at last, exactly where it belonged. Rachel didn't stay to accept a victory lap. That's not what Pop Leo's note was for. Before she left, she told them where things stood. Plainly, the way you deliver a prognosis. The bank was reversing what it could. Tom Avery had sent her mother a demand letter with a full accounting and a repayment plan. If she signed it and made it right, Rachel was not asking for anyone to be arrested. "I don't want my mother in prison," she said. "I want what my grandfather left me, which was always mine. But I'm not dropping this claim so it can be buried. It happened. It's written down. And it doesn't get erased to keep the peace." She looked at the room. "I'm not going to be in this family's life the way I was. I won't be the strong one you lean on while you call me the weak one. That's over." She picked up her pages, all but the copies, and slid them back into the envelope. "If any of you want a real relationship with me, the door is open. But it's my door now. And it locks from my side too." Then she walked out. The first one to leave. For the first time in her life. She walked down the porch steps, past the door that had been locked against her on Christmas night. She got in her car. She drove to the motel that had become more of a home than that house had ever been. She didn't cry. She felt, for the first time in years, completely her own. Here is how it settled. The credit union reversed the transactions that qualified under their fraud policy. A significant portion of Rachel's money came back, quietly, line by line, the ledger being made honest. For the rest, her mother faced a choice her lawyer surely explained in terms she couldn't misinterpret. Sign the repayment agreement and avoid criminal exposure. Or fight it and face a fraud charge with a paper trail that could win itself. She signed. People who count on never being caught fold fast once they are. The repayment plan isn't fast and it isn't comfortable. Some of it, Rachel has made peace with the possibility she may never fully see. But most of what was hers came home. And more importantly, it came home labeled correctly. Recovered. Not given. Not borrowed. Recovered. Rachel moved into her apartment in February. The one she'd been saving for the whole time. She furnished it slowly with her own paychecks, and there is a particular piece, she says, in a home that nobody can lock you out of. Cody called a few weeks after the dinner. Not to argue. Just to say he'd been thinking and that he was sorry he never asked where things came from. He started pulling back from their mother's orbit. Started finding his own footing. Rachel thinks some part of him is relieved to discover he might be capable of standing on his own, too. Her father came and helped her move a couch into the apartment. They didn't say much. That was its own kind of apology. The only kind he has. Her mother and Rachel don't speak. She has never said she was sorry. Not in a way that wasn't really about herself. And Rachel has stopped waiting for it. Because a woman who could stand at her father's funeral and lie to his granddaughter about his last gift is not a woman who is going to find the bottom of her conscience at this late hour. Rachel made peace with that. And the peace, she says, is lighter than the hope ever was. Pop Leo's napkin is in a frame now. On the wall of Rachel's kitchen. The soft yellow paper and the careful slanted print. Behind glass where it belongs. For when you have to stand on your own. She reads it some mornings with her coffee. He gave her money. Yes. And it mattered. But that was never the real gift. The real gift was that one person in her life saw exactly who she was and exactly who her mother was and trusted Rachel to figure it out before it was too late. She figured it out a little late. But she figured it out on her own. If there is anyone in your life right now who keeps insisting you are helpless, ask yourself what they are hoping you will never look at. The people who call you desperate are very often the ones counting on your desperation. The people who call you weak are very often the ones built on your strength. And sometimes standing on your own just means, finally, checking the balance. To whoever she is out there, The one who's been told she's the burden. The one who's been the strong one until being strong became the thing they used against her. You're not desperate. You're just the only one in the room who's been keeping the books honestly. Check the account. The truth is patient. It waits. And when you're ready to look at it, it will still be there, warm off the printer, waiting to be stacked neatly and taken to a lawyer's desk. Pop Leo knew. He wrote it on a napkin when Rachel was 18. Some people love you and steal from you in the same breath. Protect yourself. And she did. She did it on her own. By the way, where are you watching this story from? Drop it in the comments below, because it is remarkable, truly remarkable, to see how far these stories travel around the world. And if this one reached you when you needed it, share it with someone else who needs it too. Because the quiet ones deserve the last word. Every time.